Well, online dating isn't new. People have been doing it for more than 2 decades. But swiping in 2024 is very different than it was to log on 20 years ago to find a match.
What are the best apps for online dating?
The big three: Tinder, Bumble, Hinge.
Hey, handsome. I'm Crystal. I'm 21 and tired of going on useless dates. So if that's the same for you, download Evermatch. Seriously, it's one of the best dating apps.
There are so many apps and super users and sophisticated algorithms. Even AI is being incorporated into dating apps. So today on the show, we want to know, how much is online dating still a part of the landscape? Is everyone still doing it? Or has swipe culture left you wanting something different? One of our guests today is a Saskatoon anthropologist with a new book called Sticky, Sexy, Sad: Swipe Culture and the Darker Side of Dating Apps. We have people who will share their experiences with dating, with and without apps. And we want you to call us with your thoughts, too. We actually will give some of our first-time callers a tote bag. We'll put you in for a draw for a Blue Sky tote bag. So the number to call is 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Exciting for first-time callers to be entered into that draw. We are talking about dating today, online dating, super common these days, but it's not something we talk a lot about. Dane Patterson and Jeffrey Tram have experience with online dating and using apps. They both have partners now who they met online, and earlier they popped into studio with me to talk about their experiences. I started by asking Jeffrey about meeting his current partner using the dating app Hinge.
So I met her in 2021. I was on the app and I was just like, swiping through, and I had a lot of different, let's just say, candidates. And she really struck out. And what I did was I used a super like. So you get one of those every once in a while. You can't, if you buy more, if you want to get another one, you have to pay for it. But I used my special one and I used it on her, used some type of pickup line that I forgot. And then I was able to win her over. And that's how I met her.
Okay, I think I need a bit more information here. So you can pay to be what did you say, a super or a super user?
So basically on the apps, it's their way of making money too. You can sign up to be a premium user. And with a premium user, you get special abilities, aka better access to people, or you get super likes where like your like would capture the attention of all the other people, so you would stand out. So the chances of you guys matching are more likely, especially if you are someone who gets a lot of attention. If you use that super like, you stand out above all the other people. But it doesn't work all the time. It doesn't guarantee that match, but it gives you a better chance, especially if you're dealing with someone very beautiful, which I was.
Dane, what's your experience with online dating?
Yeah, so I met my girlfriend on Tinder, and it was funny actually because we swiped whatever and we started texting, and she was wary about me telling the story the way it is, but basically we were texting for a while, and I was like, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. She doesn't seem like very interested in me, so I was like, I don't want to ghost her. It feels bad, so I asked her out, expecting her to say no, and then we could just kind of move on. And she apparently thought, I've went on a date with a guy for a while. If I keep just leading them on, I should go out with this guy just for kicks. And then we ended up going out, and it was really fun. We ended up, so over text, I found she was a bit dry. And that's kind of why I wasn't so sure. But when we met, it was really fun. We went out to 13 Pies in Saskatoon. For those who haven't gone there, it's a great little spot. But yeah, we that's kind of where we hit it off. And then I was on other things like Hinge and Bumble, and it's weird kind of going into these because I always felt like I was kind of portraying like someone that you'd think that these other folks would want to be like when you're doing super likes and stuff. Like Jeffrey was talking about, it's funny because like you're super liking someone, but it's like a social media kind of presence, right? Mm-hmm. Like I had photos of me in Iceland. I'd been there once, and I made it look like I was some world trotter, and I had me of barefooting out in the water on my uncle's boat. and I made it look, as jockey as I could, like this was my weekend getaway every weekend. So it's that's kind of also a weird thing with dating, is that when I went out, I feel like you're portraying yourself a little bit over like the app versus when you go in person.
Yeah, you're creating a profile. You're creating the person that you think other people will like. Jeffrey, does that resonate with you? Like, what version of Jeffrey were you putting online?
Well, the thing that helps is that I'm very confident the type of person that I am. And I also know who I'm competing with, in the sense that, like, I know most of the people who go on the app, and I'll say most, I can confidently say that, go into it with bad intentions. They're trying to do it, for the hookup, which is not a bad thing, but I'm just saying, like, they're not, most of the time, these apps are made to be not serious. And so what I needed to do was show within my profile and through my conversations that I was serious. I knew that a lot of the people who I'm talking with, they already have trust issues if they're looking for a relationship, because people say they want a relationship and then they end up not showing that. I knew I had to really showcase what my intentions are, what I really wanted, and then I know I had to prove that in person as well. So having that confidence was able to be portrayed throughout the profile, and that's how I was able to find success when some of my other friends haven't been able to.
I'm so interested to learn from both of you who have a more recent experience with online dating, because as you know, online dating isn't new, and I'm older than you guys. I online dated when I was still in university, which is a while ago now. I met my husband. We did meet online. And so I'm interested in how online dating has evolved, and if as many people are using it now that were prior to, there was a bit of a stigma when some of us first started, and then it kind of like everybody was online. And so how would you characterize online dating now? Is it still the way to meet people, or has it evolved in a way where people are getting turned off of the dating app? Stain?
Well, yeah, I found it interesting because Jeffrey had said, like, like you're kind of competing with other people. And I think that's a really good way to put it, because it does feel like you've got all this competition that you're like basically you're fighting for other people's attention. Like, let's say if like I really focused on meeting someone kind of naturally, and then my friend's like, oh, come on, dude, just go on the online dating sites, it's fine. And it's I would have never met my current girlfriend had I not. Like, we just never would have. Our Venn diagrams are too far apart. And so when we're talking about kind of like older style, like, online websites versus like on your phone, like when I go travel to, Vancouver or BC to visit my family, like I can just bring my phone and on the plane, be swiping on Tinder, or, sitting at my family's house just swiping and just meet up with people that way.
Right.
Whereas, I don't know if that was ever a thing that you bring a laptop just so you could meet people. And it was like, that's the other thing, is it wasn't even like always, like, at least for me, I don't know about Jeffrey, but I wasn't always on there just like, go out for a date with someone. I was in BC, but sometimes you just chat with folks that you haven't ever met, and like there's people that,
and then you meet up.
Or you don't. Sometimes
you
I just
don't,
either way. Like, there was a couple times I was supposed to go shoot hoops with someone one day and never see them again because I was leaving the next day, and that's kind of all it was going to be. But it's a weird dynamic that way. But kind of going back to that competition aspect, like going to a bar and trying to meet someone is a lot different when that bar now has 1,000 people in it, and you can decide whether you like them or not by flicking on a picture.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Jeffrey, how would you characterize online dating now? I know you weren't doing it when I was doing it, but I'm just wondering what insight you have into how we interact with one another. And I just think about the attention economy, right? Like, we're just swiping, whether we're liking posts on Instagram or you're going through online dating profiles. What's your sense of how the whole thing has changed?
Well, first and foremost, I wanted to say that online dating has been my only dating option. In high school, I never dated at all because I knew the people around me were not the type of people that I ever wanted to date. Different, farming, agriculture, that's not my thing. So going into university, I've only used online dating, and I've seen it evolve over the time because more and more people are choosing to use it, especially after the pandemic. That's when it really got busy. Almost everyone I talk to are like, oh, you're lucky because you actually found someone. Now there's so much people on the app. It is so difficult to find a match. And I don't have like the statistics to back it, but I've seen it from some of my friends who are girls, and I see their profiles compared to a lot of the guy profiles. The girl profiles are crazy because they get like over hundreds, even up to like thousands of likes. So imagine you're in that position where you have to choose between 1 out of 1,000, and you're maintaining conversations with like maybe 10 to 20 people. That is extremely difficult. So that's why people, I find when I'm talking to my friends and stuff, they're so frustrated with online dating, because it's like they're using the app every day consistently, and they might be lucky to get one match. And then even with that match, they're not having a conversation because she's so busy with so many other conversations. So online dating right now in this current state is probably very frustrating for a lot of young people. I know I'm very lucky. If I was in the market right now, I probably wouldn't be. I'd still be looking right now. I'd probably still be swiping.
Yeah, decision fatigue is what I'm hearing. I want to keep talking to you guys, but we'll leave it there. We've got a few other people to get to, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Leisha.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dane Patterson and Jeffrey Tram sharing their experience using online or dating social media apps. We'd love to hear your stories about dating. Are you using apps or have you sworn off of them? We're going to put the names of new callers into a draw to win a Blue Sky tote bag, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Trina Orchard is the author of Sticky, Sexy, Sad, Swipe Culture and the Darker Side of Dating Apps. She's an anthropologist, a feminist, and currently an associate professor and faculty scholar at Western University's School of Health Studies. Her research focuses on sex, gender, health, and dating apps. Trina grew up in Saskatoon, where she took many contemplative walks along the river. And I would like to welcome Trina to the show, kind of like welcome home, Trina.
It's great to be here. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. I have so many questions for you. There's so much to talk about. Interesting listening to Jeffrey and Dane, hey? And like there's lots to pull out from that. But before we kind of dissect some of the things that they said, what got you on a dating app in the first place? What's a bit of your story?
So the context for me is that I had been celibate, not dating anyone for a while. I was also relatively newly sober and didn't know how I was going to go out and meet people in the fairly small conservative city that I live in. And by this time, 2017, dating apps had been around for a while. I was a little bit embarrassed to begin swiping, in part because I thought I would not be able to understand how an app works because I'm basically a Flintstone in terms of technology, still to this day. But I really wanted to connect and I wanted to try out intimacy in a different way. And so I jumped in.
So you learned a lot. What would you say, especially after hearing from Dane and Jeffrey, what was it like to be on those dating apps? The emotional labor, the effort that it seems to take to meet someone these days. Tell me about your experience just in terms of how much effort you had to put in to these apps.
Yeah, the thing that struck me at the beginning was the labor, how difficult it was, not necessarily to have conversations, but for the conversations to go anywhere compared to the analog dating situation that I had grown up most of my life in, where, you know, necessarily maybe not the best way, going to the bar, getting kind of hammered and stuff like that. But, you know, you'd meet one or two people in the course of a few months. But on the dating apps, you're connecting with so many people. So the volume is so different as well. And that can also really contribute to swiping fatigue and sort of not knowing exactly what's going to be, what kind of unique sentences or phrases and topics of conversation that you might want to engage in with, you know, person after person after person.
With so many people on there, is there a sameness to a lot of profiles? Like, what are some of the themes or categories that you found yourself being able to kind of put people in?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. I mean, and there seems to be, at least when I was swiping, quite a difference in men and women's profiles. Women's tend to be a bit more well curated, more recent photos, photos better taken, not always photos in the car, you know, the car photo shot, and also the bathroom selfie. You know, a lot of het men, that's their go-to. But I think in terms of some of the things that were mentioned by the men at the opening, you know, the world traveler, the sporty adventure guy, also the chill, laid back person, right? You know, because you're going to be really adventurous, but then you've also got to be chill.
How do you illustrate chill on a dating app?
Well, with your friends, with drinks, like just looking really cool, this kind of thing, or on a beach somewhere, sort of
Yeah.
vacation. Being at the gym is huge. Pictures of
Mm-hmm.
the gym are massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there's also different categories. When I was swiping on Bumble, for instance, there were a lot of men who identified themselves as entrepreneurs. And someone at once told me, yeah, that's code for unemployed. But it's like, so what are all these, who are all these entrepreneurial men on Bumble? So some of it was a bit murky in terms of what they actually did. Whereas I always put my profession out there, I probably put a little too much information out there at the beginning because I was just being honest. It's like, this is who I am, and I want to be genuine.
One thing that we talk about a lot in Saskatchewan is the number of men we see standing with a fish, which I actually don't think is unique to Saskatchewan. That transcends borders, doesn't it? But what's going on there?
Well, I mean, that picture itself has been dissected quite a lot over the years. I mean, some people say the fish is a proxy for the male genitals. Some people say that men do it because they know that women are sick of it. So it's kind of this like slippery, kind of violent, comedic kind of situation. I think some men just like to fish. And I did notice in a lot of the profiles that feature men with the fish, it's one of the best pictures because they are smiling. They seem to be in a natural environment that they're enjoying. And that's, fairly attractive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So as you're swiping, and I know you have found matches over the years, what did it teach you about our desire for connection and how differently we're making those connections when the first point of contact is on an app?
Yeah, one of the interesting things I found is that so these things are called dating apps, but not everybody is on there to date. And I realized that when I was talking to so many people and so few of them actually wanted to meet in person. Sometimes that's because people are nervous to meet in person. I understand that. But a lot of it is because dating is just one aim of a lot of people who are on there. Some of them are just on there, just to pass the time, or they're creeping an ex or something, or they're just kind of playing around and maybe have a bit sort of nefarious aims. But the fact that dating is only an aim for a portion of people really contributes to the amount of work that you have to put in to find someone who is really on the same page as you. And people can put on their profiles, oh, I'm looking for a long-term relationship, but then they're actually only looking for hookups. And it's kind of a classic thing if someone says no hookups on their profile, it's like they're probably looking for hookups. And there's no shade against hookups, I should say that. There's not one way of doing a relationship that is better than another, but so I found that particularly interesting.
How addictive are dating apps? Like I think about my own use of Instagram. We talk about this a lot, right? And so dating apps are just another piece of the whole online puzzle that we're part of these days. So how addictive are the apps?
Yeah, that's a really important question because built into the desire to swipe is usually a desire to connect, but there's also the really important influence of the apps in our swiping behavior. And what I mean by that is that we are constantly getting messages from the apps as we swipe, and if we don't swipe enough. I was really surprised by this, and I had no idea this was going to happen. But I'm swiping away, or I've taken a little break from swiping, and I will get a notification from Tinder or Bumble, hey, don't leave that match waiting. Hey, it's 9 p.m., it's prime swiping time. So they are actively encouraging the users to be on their product, to swipe, to swipe, to swipe. And so I think that they are addictive in the sense that, they do like ding, ding, ding. They kind of light up our serotonin receptors. And so that's why a lot of people call them mini slot machines because they work in that same way. And they're also like slot machines because they're rigged.
Rigged? What do you mean?
Rigged in the sense that if you use the dating app often, you will get a continual influx of new matches, of new people you haven't seen before. If you're passive and if you take a few days off and you open the app, you will likely see people who you've already swiped left on and indicated that you're not interested in. So you kind of get punished. And I didn't realize that until over time when I was observing all these things as both a dater, but also an anthropologist who studies sexuality. I was like, wow, there's a lot of surveillance going on here.
Oh, I have so many more questions, so don't go anywhere, Trina. I'm Leisha Gerbinski. I'm speaking with Trina Orchard, the author of Sticky, Sexy, Sad, Swipe Culture, and the Darker Side of Dating Apps. We're hoping you'll share your stories with us today. And if you're a first-time caller on Blue Sky, we'll enter your name into a draw to win a Blue Sky tote bag, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email us at bluesky@cbc.ca. So, Trina, the amount of surveillance that's going on, I also want to ask you about algorithms, and I'm very curious if white people are mostly seeing white people, if people in a higher earning bracket are seeing people who make similar amounts of money. Just, you might think you're seeing everybody that's on there, but how is that being manipulated and targeted in a way that maybe we should be mindful of what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's a complicated set of issues, but it definitely speaks to the way that we are, that our data and how we swipe is being interpreted and sort of computed all the time by the algorithms. And also the fact that, a lot of people have noticed and experienced different things like racial fetishization. And there's a lot of evidence to demonstrate that people tend to select individuals who are most like them. And if you're living in a city where there's a small percentage of swipers who are from a particular racialized group, well, they might have many fewer opportunities to meet different kinds of people because they might be sort of naturally sort of swiped out of the equation. And that's really problematic. And it also replicates, the broader inequities in our society.
Before we go much further, did you have fun? Were there fun moments in your experience as you were?
That's why chapter 5 of the book is called Love Me Tender, dear. There was love, there was fun. Oh, sure. Of course there was fun. I mean, if it was just misery, I couldn't have done it so long. Not even for teen memoir. But no, I mean, I also just found it so fascinating as a sexuality scholar and someone who knows nothing about technology. I'm like, wow, I am getting so pulled into this digital rabbit hole. If this is happening to me, this is just really extraordinary. And just given how many millions and millions of people are having these same experiences, it was so fascinating as well as being exhausting. But there were many moments of fun and pleasure and meeting cool people I would have never met any other way. Absolutely. So I don't regret it.
I want to bring someone else into the conversation who has an approach that's unique, different. Katie Abramovic is 26. She's single. She's been listening to the show, and she joins us right now. Katie, welcome to Blue Sky.
Hi, Leisha. Happy to be here.
So I want to first just ask you what from the conversation so far stands out to you as you're listening. There's been a lot, but...
Well, maybe it's a cop-out to say all of it. As someone who not only does an online date, but has never, I always find it fascinating to hear about people's experiences. It was interesting to listen to the boys talk about kind of puffing up their profiles. It was interesting to listen to Trina talk about trends that we're noticing and analytics in the apps. So really the whole thing was fascinating.
But hang on, you said you don't and you never have. What's behind that decision?
Well, I suppose a stroke of luck. I was in a really long-term relationship for a very long time. We met when we were young, and truly I've never had a chance to join them. But as time has gone on and so many of my good friends, both male and female, have experienced the apps, I think I feel this secondhand fear, you could say, about them. And as someone who's never tried them, I almost have this perspective of I've stayed clean this long, why dabble now?
But how will you meet someone, Katie?
Well, perhaps a stroke of luck, Leisha.
But do you get that question? Because there is that idea that everyone's using them. It's the way that people meet. So do you worry you're missing out on something?
No, I never really worry that I'm missing out, nor do I worry that I'll meet somebody or not meet somebody. I think that with apps and online dating, it's not that I'm against it or that I never want to say I'll never do it, because you never want to say never. But I think a larger conversation behind it really goes into modern day socialization, both romantic and not romantic. And I think as someone who considers themselves very social, very extroverted, I don't find it challenging to walk into a room and strike up a conversation with someone. So I don't have that same fear that I won't meet somebody.
But where would you potentially meet someone? Prior to meeting my spouse, I had tried it all, and my bestie and I were just laughing the other day about some of this, because this is all bringing back lots of memories of online dating. But we joined every club, and we were outgoing, we were social. It's hard to meet people. So where would you meet someone potentially?
Well, I think that's part of the excitement of it. It could be anywhere. It could be someone could come into my business and I could meet them. I could be waiting in line at the grocery store. I could be going on my nightly walk. I think I fear that maybe younger people have started to corner themselves and believe that the only way you can meet someone is online. And I'm not saying you can't, but quite literally, there's a whole world out there.
I want to ask Trina a question. I think you talk about this in your book, that that sometimes people will know each other, but it's not until you see the face on a dating app that you might see someone in a class, for example, and you might think they're cute, but that first point of contact will be on a dating app rather than walking across the classroom or going into a bar and meeting them. Just curious, Trina, your perspective on some of the trends that we're seeing in terms of that first meetup.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there are still millions of people who are swiping, but we are seeing a pushback against dating apps and kind of the broader meta universe, and the way that a few companies exert so much influence in so many aspects of our lives. But one of the interesting things that my students were sharing with me is that if they would see someone on campus, then they would look for them on the app. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they would connect with them on the app, but what they're doing is they're doing their own informal data gathering. And then they might actually source that person on LinkedIn and then see if he's on Snapchat. And then so they're triangulating, their data, because we present in a different way in a dating app than we present on LinkedIn and then on Snapchat or on Instagram. And so it also tells us that people are quite scared just to do what Katie is doing and talk about, it's amazing, your confidence. I think a lot of people lack that because we have become so dependent on dating apps. And yeah, so I think it's kind of a flux period. Still people swiping, but there is a pushback. And there's also a real blossoming of in real life dating activities as well.
Okay, I want to talk more about that too. But Katie, you were nodding, and especially when Trina said we're in this flux period. So first off, do you find that people are cross-checking different apps and doing their research prior to meeting someone? And are we at a point where we're using different methods to meet people? What do you think?
I think for sure. I think you can almost count on the fact that in modern day, we would be fools not to use the tools that are at our disposal. And so a bit of calculation is going on behind just about everything we see. But I think it's fairly common to look somebody up to see if they're single, to see what's going on with them. I think it happens all the time.
You can call us too if you're listening and you've got some stories to share, either about using dating apps or if you've got another approach to meeting people, maybe a story from way back. Love to hear from you today, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. And for first-time callers, we'll enter your name in for a draw to win a Blue Sky tote bag. Katie, just one last question. Are you seeing a trend in your peer group? Are people trying new things? Like Trina said, if there's a bit of a dip in people's appetite for dating apps, what do you think?
An interesting trend that I've observed with my friends and a lot of people that I see day to day in working life is there's this trend of rapid cycling on dating apps where they'll delete them all. They'll clear them off their phone. They're so committed to meeting someone in real life. A month later, the magic moment hasn't happened, and then they re-download them all, and it cycles. So I would say that's the largest cycle that I've noticed in real life.
So interesting. Okay, Katie, thanks for joining us today. I'll let you go.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care. That's Katie Abramovic, who lives in Regina. Trina Orchard is with us, the author of Sticky, Sexy, Sad, Swipe Culture, and the Darker Side of Dating Apps. Rapid cycling, you did write about that, and people trying to take a break from the apps, and then they go back on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the install, delete, reinstall dance. Yeah, it's very, very common. And we've become reliant on these technologies, even though we know that they're imperfect. So I think that's why we're scared to kind of like say goodbye to them permanently, because they are an option that we've become familiar with. We sometimes continue to do things that we know aren't that great for us, but we've become socialized to use them consistently. And also there is a message from the dating apps that, dating is so hard. So you really need our product, because, there's an app for that. The way that the narrative behind the marketing of dating apps is very seductive.
I am curious about the business model, because obviously the app wants you to continue to be a user, but the end goal is to potentially, I guess, to meet someone or meet multiple people. So tell me about the business side of it. The apps obviously want you to continue being a user and to continue swiping. So are there competing goals between what people want and what the apps want?
Yeah, those tensions are really important, because on the one hand, it's, meet your person, find your person. And a lot of dating apps, they measure their success by the amount of people who either form a couple or are married. So those are kind of like the markers of success in one way for the dating apps. But what is more important is for people perhaps to not meet their one person and to keep swiping and to keep looking and to keep ghosting. So the emphasis on productivity really lends itself to some of the more unfortunate behaviors, things like ghosting, things like catfishing, things like just, breadcrumbing, just sort of trailing people along, and with no intention really of ever meeting in person, let alone forming a relationship with them. So those tensions are something that you feel as a user. And the thing is that we often blame ourselves for that. We're like, wow, this really isn't working for me. And it's like, we are up against the dating app industry, technology, the algorithm, the very diverse motivations of the people out there in cyberspace, and then what we try and sort of aim for in our own lives. So there's so many people actually that have an impact on our dating success on dating apps, not just ourselves. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, was to encourage people to not feel so bad and to not blame themselves.
What happened the first time you were ghosted? We may have to tell people what that actually means. And it's actually, I laughed out loud, because you wrote customer service or something. You're like, is something wrong with my profile? This person's not getting back to me. Oh,
but you just gave it away.
But yes, it was just so funny.
So what it means is it's very funny. When you're ghosted, that means you have had a connection, whether it's for a few minutes or even it can happen after months or even years, and the person you're connected with just vanishes. And there's no explanation prior to. They just literally poof. They are gone. Sometimes on the dating apps, you'll find them again because they might recycle or rejoin, and but sometimes you never see them again, and you have no recourse to understand why. And the first time it happened to me, I was at work. I was just about to board the bus before I got my own vehicle. Oh my God. And this really hot guy, he vanished. I didn't know what happened. I thought, okay, this is a perfect example of me not knowing how to use these apps. So I emailed Bumble customer service and explained to them what transpired. And God love them. They were like, check your settings. They actually didn't tell me what happened. I kind of like figured it out, but it was mortifying. It was mortifying, and it happened more than once.
Yeah. I'm laughing because it's so relatable. And, I just think so many people listening, if they have any experience with this, like they totally get it. And just the emotional roller coaster that you're on when you're dating. We actually have someone on the line who's been listening who wants to join the conversation. And so Allison is in Moose Jaw. Hey, Allison, welcome to Blue Sky.
Hi, Leisha. Thanks. Yeah, I find this a very interesting conversation, and I just kind of wanted to put it out there. I'm from the generation kind of before dating apps, although I know a lot of people who've met that way and are now happily married. But I think we all have a responsibility to keep in mind of our single friends that we know and like our connections to make those let people meet naturally by the old method of also, hey, can I pass this person's number on to you? And I don't want to brag, but I've had some success doing that in my lifetime. And I think, there's probably a conversation that goes beyond apps, but just creating communities where we look out for each other and we keep in mind who might kind of hit it off. And it's just so wonderful when it happens and you're the person you can take a little bit, obviously, not all of it, a little bit of credit for making that connection happen. It's just wonderful.
I love that. So you have done it, and you've been able to pat yourself on the back for connecting a couple people.
Just my role in the introduction, right? Yeah. Like obviously the rest is out of your control. Yeah. But yeah, I've had some success, and then there's been people who've been like, nope, we didn't hit it off, but wow, what a great person and what a beautiful friendship, right? Yeah. And I think that, so to this younger generation, I know like this social media apps, that's great, and I think there's probably a great role for that, but I think, person to person is still so wonderful, and it takes courage, and it takes all of us to, look out for each other.
Allison, thanks so much for calling. Nice to hear from you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye.
That's Allison in Moose Jaw. I'm Leisha Grabinski. Our guest today is Trina Orchard, author of Sticky, Sexy, Sad, Swipe Culture, and the Darker Side of Dating Apps. Trina, what do you think about that? Because I know that in writing this, you've thought a lot about connection, community, romance, all of it. So just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, exactly what Allison said in terms of, us introducing ourselves or introducing friends to other people. That is traditionally how matchmaking or how pair bonding worked for centuries and centuries. It was mediated through pre-existing social networks, exactly like she said. And, the thing about meeting someone in person is that pretty darn soon whether the vibes are there or they're not. Whereas when you're online, you can string each other along for ages because you can be anybody you want to be online. So it's much more efficient to meet people in person.
How have some corners of the internet responded to your writing about online dating and just your openness about it? And you're open about online dating, but you're also open about the fact that you are writing from a feminist point of view. And so, how have some corners of the internet reacted to your work?
You mean trolls?
We could call them trolls. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because from the book, I have received at least at events and by email and, casual conversations and social media, nothing but very positive. And men are saying, thank you for teaching us about women. And also thank you for reflecting your experiences with men with care. And so that is wonderful. But when I've written shorter articles that are posted online and I'm identifying myself as a feminist and talking about dating, I've been trolled to degrees that I had never anticipated. Horrendous, brutal comments about how stupid feminism is, how ugly I am. That's why I didn't have the success that I wanted to have. How, I should be thankful for the amount of dates that I got because men would kill for the, success that I got, on and on and on and on. So, that was quite arresting to deal with. And it seemed that my identification as a feminist was the thing that really got them fired up the most. And it was kind of challenging to manage that at the beginning, but then you realize that it's not personal. They talk this way to every person who is female identifying or not female identifying, because it's not just women who are feminists, right? So, but it just really gives me a sense of the cultural temperature that we are in. Feminism is always going to be a contested thing. Women's lives are in danger. A lot of other people's lives are in danger. And this experience really kind of brought that home to a certain degree.
Yeah, tell me more about that, because yes, of course. But how does the cultural temperature play out in these on these apps?
Well, it kind of reflects what I was talking about earlier in terms of volume. When you get like sort of misogynist comments at one after another, because it's not like you talk to usually just one or two people a day. You could be talking with so many people a day. And if it's a certain point in time, and I began swiping during the beginning of Me Too, And I was using the feminist app Bumble, small f feminist. But there were men on there who seemed to choose that app specifically because it was feminist as an opportunity to blast women who were on there trying to date and trying to just be their best selves as feminists. And so the volume of the vitriol, and you just learn how many people have been sort of brainwashed under the patriarchy to feel this terrible threat against women who just want to kind of make the world a better place for everybody.
There's always so much shifting and changing in all of our online spaces, but I think there's a lot of attention on things like artificial intelligence, and I find it interesting how that's going to play a role in online dating. And so I just want to share with you a bit of a CBC story that talked about how AI is this new frontier in dating apps.
I'm not sure how to put this. I usually go for 7s, but I guess I'll settle for a 10.
Super smooth stuff, but not entirely original. That was from an ad I saw on TikTok for an AI app that generates pickup lines. The first thing that came to mind was, could people catfish their personality with AI? That might be on the extreme end, but there's an emerging trend of people using AI on dating apps. But is it fair to enhance your personality using AI when you're dating online? I started by speaking with 2 researchers who study dating apps. They say these risk coaches aren't a bad idea given how exhausting online dating can be.
I mean, I speak to myself as someone who has his own anxieties with respects to, dating and sex and maybe what's the right thing to say.
Imagine going through the online dating experience and having an AI coach there to kind of provide you with guidance, suggestions to help you through the process.
Dating apps like Bumble already have prompts to help people chat better. But in the last year, a bunch of AI chat assistants debuted in app stores, going one step further in helping you flirt. Would you try it?
Trina, would you try it? Just curious what your thoughts are on what might be next in these spaces.
Would I try it? No, because I'm a good communicator. And, I don't really want to buy into the idea that dating is so difficult, so we need all this additional technology. I don't think that's true. I think that just lends itself to more digital dependence. I think that it can be kind of helpful every now and then to have some tips. But, I mean, it also reflects the fact that dating apps aren't working that well if we need additional technology and additional algorithms to help us navigate it. That just seems like such a silly thing in some ways. And there's also AI services that are connected with dating apps that are like referred to as dating coaches, and one of the things that I learned when I was swiping is that I took a chance on people who I normally wouldn't have ever. And sometimes those worked out into really interesting friendships or lovers. And is AI going to know when and who I might want to take a chance on if the person kind of falls outside my usual type? Like, we need to have that natural variety, and that is such an important part of intimacy and mating and dating. And for thousands of years is the variety. And one of the things that I noticed, pretty soon after I began swiping and sharing my stories is that our stories are almost identical, and that's not natural. That's because it's mediated by the same technologies.
That's so interesting. So, one last question for you. Where do we go from here? Do you think more and more people will get off of them, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, digital anything is here to stay. I think it's the way that but we're already seeing that people are using these apps differently than the way that they were initially designed in some instances. And that to me is kind of cool and exciting and reflects, digital flexibility. And I think that the resurgence in real life events is very powerful. And I think it's a carryover from the pandemic. And people want to rely a bit less on digital things, especially for this aspect of their life. So I think it's going to be a mixed ecology going forward, and I think that's okay.
This has been great. So interesting, Trina. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. It's been delightful talking to you, so thank you.
Oh, it was so much fun. I'm so glad that you asked me to do this.
That's Trina Orchard, author of Sticky, Sexy, Sad, Swipe Culture, and the Darker Side of Dating Apps. She is an associate professor at Western University's School of Health Studies, but she's originally from Saskatoon.